Broadcasting live from the Zimmer Communications World Headquarters.
Great news for the American people.
This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri with Branden Rathert, featuring Stephanie Bell, News Director Brian Houseworth, John Marsh, and Hannah, the producer.
This is why we listen to you.
Get ready, pal.
And now, here's your host, Branden Rathert.
Although the issue would have raised the threshold for approving state constitutional amendments, it was seen actually as a precursor referendum on abortion, because had it passed, an abortion rights amendment on the November ballot would likely have been blocked.
Wow, you think this is a harbinger of things to come? That measure in Ohio, a controversial Ohio measure that turned into a proxy war. As you heard in the open, they're saying, listen, we want to change how we let citizens change the Constitution. But really, it's about abortion. And this is another strike against, I think, really abortion opponents. Because you look at what's happened in various states like Texas, Iowa, Idaho, South Carolina. You've had judges there, at least in those states already, saying, listen, your laws are just too strict. You're going to have to change the game on this, or let's at least pause this for right now. And then after what we saw in Ohio, this was a state, by the way, in 2020, the Republican candidate for president, Trump, carried the state 53 points. This measure rejected. 56% of the voters said no on strengthening, on trying to make it tougher to get a constitutional amendment passed in the state of Ohio. Good morning. Welcome into the show. It's Wake Up Mid-Missouri. I am Branden Rathert, along with Stephanie Bell, John Marsh, producer Hannah, and Brian Houseworth. And Marsh, we're seeing the abortion battle on one level or another kind of been playing out here in Missouri over the past several weeks.
Yeah, with the whole IP thing and the repeated lawsuits we're seeing bouncing into the courtroom over the ballot language and the fiscal note for all of this and all. I think this is interesting for people to watch, because we've heard from a lot of lawmakers and others that they would much rather prefer a higher majority, a 60%, a two-thirds majority, as opposed to a simple majority to amend the state constitution. And I think that makes a lot of sense for a lot of people.
Well, they would want to make it tense. Well, we need to change how we do the Constitution, and I get it, but and I might be in the minority here, but isn't it the majority plus one? Isn't that how it should work? If we go majority rule, isn't that how it should be, whether we like it or not? And if not, if we don't like that, that's cool. But what is the number?
And I think the argument that was made, and we've heard, gosh, you name it, we've heard a lot of folks on the radio say, well, a lot of the things that are put on the state constitution as amendments, should they better be like the recreational marijuana angle? Should that have been something the legislature had been better off doing? Well, it failed.
One of the things in Houseworth, I want to get your thoughts on this. Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft also running for governor. He's going to be joining us a little bit after 8 o'clock this morning here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. And I want to ask him, because we've seen a lot of play with abortion in Missouri, and I'm wondering, because polling has shown, listen, I get it. Most of us find abortion distasteful. Most of us listening, not the majority of Americans, nor the majority of Missourians. The majority of Missourians, according to polling we recently saw, and I think this was Emerson Research, polling we shared right here on the show, said the majority of Missourians last several elections have voted Republican. The majority of Missourians are okay with some kind of abortion. And I wonder if this is something Nancy Mace, Congresswoman South Carolina, who made big headlines when Trump didn't endorse her, she won anyway. She said last week, you also know who Nancy Mace is. She's also known for something else, John.
Too much information.
Had a prayer breakfast talking about her husband, her fiance nudged her in the morning.
Almost made her late to work.
Hey, baby, can we? No, I got to go speak at this prayer breakfast. And then she shared the story at the prayer breakfast. But Nancy Mace has said, listen, this is going to be something that Republicans really going to have to, you're going to have to compromise on this. Houseworth, your take, any comparisons that we can take from Ohio and apply that to what's happening in the Show Me State?
Hard to say, Branden. A little different issue there in Ohio, but there are some similarities. I would point out that when Governor Ronald Reagan was the governor of California, and a champion of the pro-life movement. I mean, he's a hero to many pro-life people. He always believed in opposing abortion except to protect the mother's life, rape, and incest. lost. And that was his position all 8 years, as I recall. And I recall during the Ashcroft years, the Teasdale years, the Bond years, a lot of similarities as well. We'll see what happens, and I've seen some of those polls as well. Polls aren't necessarily votes, Brandon. We don't. We'll see if I'm sure it's going to come up for a vote. I know in the rural areas, it may be a little bit different than it is in the urban area. So we'll see. But the biggest thing on what Ashcroft's saying about the initiative petition situation is he believes that some of these people come in, and we're not necessarily talking about abortion. He's talking about puppy mills, other things like that. Then from out of state people coming in, and he believes that there should be some reform that failed this past year due to primarily Republican infighting. So we'll see what happens. But the Ohio thing definitely is a big deal.
As a matter of fact, Jay Ashcroft, so he will be here 8:10 this morning. We'll ask, because I'm wondering, and I think it's a legitimate question, are Republicans, high-ranking elected Republican office holders in Missouri, are they afraid of those poll numbers polling for what it's worth? Are they afraid of the poll numbers that nationwide for years, most of Americans, they're okay with some type of abortion? Now, maybe Missouri Republican elected leaders worried because the majority of Missourians, according to this polling, and they've seen it. The majority of Missourians are okay with this. I think something that we're going to have to be working on. Can we say, so Stephanie Bell is going to be here. She's having mommy issues this morning? Is that,
no.
Well, I was going to say mommy issues like mommy brain.
No.
Moms and Stephanie Bell can get incredibly busy. This woman has more responsibilities than anybody I know on this planet. And so it's okay when she gets mommy brain. Where's Steph this morning?
Somebody forgot to tell her that we were doing the show from Jefferson City this morning.
So we are, aren't we?
We are.
We have several different places.
Most of us are, anyways.
Yeah.
In which we can do Wake Up Mid-Missouri. We have several different ways that we can do it. But what's key there, and we know this because we are in, by the way, don't tell anybody this. This is just for you since you're listening to Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Shh, it's just between us, okay? We are in the communications industry. So we understand
and
communications.
I'm sure she's listening right now, so I would be careful. She's got the text messages between you and her, Brandon, that show that you never told her that you were going to be there.
Yeah, and I think she's saying the same thing about she has no text messages from you either.
Oh, no, but I owned up to it. That's the difference.
Marsh, how come you didn't tell Steph we were going to be in a different studio this morning?
I was amazed I got the word.
Houseworth?
Well, I'm in Columbia this morning, so I'm in my normal chair, but it's all good. It's all good.
All right, Steph,
right.
she'll be here. We are going to also be doing the Daily DC Rundown coming up 6:25. Daily DC Rundown. Joe being Joe again. But the other thing we're going to be doing, Fox's Ryan Schmelz, there were some border hearings. Remember yesterday, Stephanie told us this in the Daily DC Rundown. Joe Biden going to a border state, going to Arizona. And we're like, oh, good. Are you doing something? Because illegal immigration causing a lot of problems even here in mid-Missouri. You look at the number of folks right now that are in the Cole, Boone, Callaway County jails, and they've got something with fentanyl attached to them charges. There's a lot of them. Comes from Mexico, illegal immigration. Joe goes to Arizona, but he doesn't go to the border. He dedicates more land for, climate change and stuff. But there was a hearing yesterday. Fox's Ryan Schmelz joins us 6:35 to give us the highlights on that this morning here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Meanwhile, some local elections here in mid-Missouri yesterday.
A big one was the special election in Cole County, Jefferson City, where Prop L, the library tax increase, failed nearly 2-1 at the polls.
And this is something, and I know the people that are involved with the library. They're incredibly passionate about it. We had them on the show. We also had folks who were against the library tax. But and my take right now, especially with libraries having been in the news, material that you can find in libraries, it's a really difficult time to ask overtaxed people already in this economy since Joe Biden has been president. Seriously.
I think you're on the money. I think that could have been more of a tough sell part of it than people maybe even realized.
Since January 20th of 2021, gas prices in the past 7 days. Have you seen, when you're driving up and down 54, have you seen some of the prices for gasoline right now?
Yup.
And that, yeah.
Yup.
Especially when you're driving from California to Columbia every morning, when you're driving from Russellville to town, when you're driving from Bracito, when you're driving from Fulton onto the campus at Mizzou. Yeah, no, I can't cut loose with any more money. Gas prices, grocery prices, chicken prices. We have 2 major plants, chicken processing plants, closing in Missouri. This is causing issues.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tyson.
Yeah, and now we're expecting the cost of chicken to go up even more. So to go and ask people for a tax on a library.
Well, it scares people right here in mid-Missouri. Hannah can relate. California, Missouri, the 2 biggest employers there are Cargill Turkey and the Burger Smokehouse.
Yeah. So to go and ask people for more money, and the homeless thing. And the homeless issue, by the way, that is not the fault of the library. And so to that extent, I kind of feel bad. That's not their fault. But this goes back. One of the things we try to do here on the show is we talk about these things. This is how this affects you. And for a long, long time, we've been talking about the major issue of homelessness in Columbia and how that's affecting people. And what have we been saying? So Columbia tries to kick them out, which they don't. They try to make changes. Where do they go? They're going to Fulton. They're going to Sedalia. They're going to Jefferson City. A couple of weeks ago, a homeless encampment along the river removed. So a lot of those homeless people now apparently milling around the library in Jefferson City because of the ineptitude of leadership in the city of Columbia. What leaders in Columbia have done, now it's causing issues for the library in Jefferson City because folks are looking at the homeless issue saying, I'm not going into the library and I'm not going to support it with more of my tax dollars because you can't get into the library.
Running a gauntlet of homeless people. And like you've pointed out numerous times on the air, the vast majority are people with substance abuse issues / mental health issues.
Yeah. And so, yeah, you are right to be afraid of a lot of homeless people. Because what do we say? Number one issue amongst homeless people, addiction issues and mental health issues. Sometimes it's somebody who's had mental health issues over the years. People that have mental health issues that live on the streets, yeah, they kind of scare me. They would scare me even more from walking into a library holding my granddaughter's Harper's hand in the library, and there's people with mental issues out there. Yeah, I'm not going into the library, and I'm certainly not going to give up more of my hard-earned money to support this. Meanwhile, Jefferson City has a brand new city administrator. I thought this was interesting. KRCG last night asked Brian Crane's got experience in Moberly, been around mid-Missouri for a long time. They asked, what do you think some of the big issues are? The number one answer that he gave, I thought was pretty interesting. We're going to highlight that for you. Also coming up at 6:35. Meanwhile, 5 minutes from now, coming up, we are going to be doing your daily DC rundown. Joe, being Joe. Again, we can compliment Joe. He's at least considered. wonders of the world, are there?
We used to be 7 when we were in school. Has it changed since then?
According to Joe Biden, it has, and that's getting us into today's daily D.C. rundown, declaring it good not only for Arizona, but for the planet. Joe Biden yesterday, while talking about the 9 natural wonders of the world, signed a national monument designation for the Greater Grand Canyon, turning the decades-long vision of Native American tribes and environmentalists into reality. Now, this is coming as Biden is on a 3-state Western campaign swing. They're not going to tell you that that's what it is, but that's what it is. The move is going to help preserve about 1,500 square miles just to the north and south of Grand Canyon National Park. Now, it encompasses canyons, plateaus, tributaries that feed a range of plant wildlife. And really, seriously, nothing was going to happen in these lands anyway. Joe says, we're going to sign this. We're going to set this land aside. He says preserving these lands is good not only for Arizona, but for the planet. Incidentally, if he would have hopped in the presidential motorcade, headed south about 7 hours, would have been at the border. He could have hopped on an airplane, about a 1-hour flight down to the border. Matter of fact, there was a border hearing in Arizona yesterday where the president was. Couldn't show up, couldn't show any interest. And this is important. Look at what the federal government is doing. The federal government is suing the governor of Texas. The federal government is suing an American who is trying to protect America's interests by keeping illegal immigrants out of the country.
Over buoys in the Rio Grande.
Think about that, John. The feds are suing a fellow American for doing what they cannot do. 6:35, Ryan Schmelz from Fox going to give us a couple of the big things that unfolded in this hearing yesterday. And by the way, as that's going on, pictures released yesterday of men like within bulletproof vests and machine guns coming across the border, coming here illegally. Those pictures released right as Joe is in Arizona. Other news this morning. So obviously we know about what happened with the vote in Ohio regarding changing. Now, technically it was not about abortion, John, but what was it really about?
Abortion.
It was about abortion. So we know that election news. Ohio voters said, no, we're going to leave it. If you want to change our state constitution, we're going to leave it the way it is. So
they had a big turnout, too, didn't they? Like 500,000 voters.
And early voting was huge. As a matter of fact, early voting outdid what happened in their May 2022 primaries. It's kind of a huge deal. So now we move over to Mississippi. Governor Tate Reeves won the Republican nomination as he seeks a second term, setting up a general election contest against Democrat Brandon Presley in the heavily conservative state. You know who's from Mississippi? Probably the most famous musician of all time, Elvis Presley. You know who Brandon Presley's related to? Elvis Presley.
That's what I just said.
Right. I wonder if that's on his, hey, I'm related to Elvis, vote for me. Reeves defeated 2 first-time candidates, John Witcher, a physician who has criticized COVID-19 vaccinations, and David Hardigree, a military veteran. Presley is related to rock and roll icon Elvis Presley. He ran unopposed. Former President Trump yesterday kept up the attacks on special counsel Jack Smith and vowed to continue talking about his criminal case, even as prosecutors sought a protective order to limit the evidence that Trump and his team could share, whether it's on his social medias, wherever it is. They're saying, listen, you can't do this. And Trump is going, yeah, I can. My case, my stuff. I absolutely can do this. Coming up just a few minutes from now here on the show, we are going to be joined by Fox's Ryan Schmelz. What happened? This border see that movie, Sound of Freedom, and see some of the realities of what's happening. We're going to be joined shortly by Fox's Ryan Schmelz because there was a hearing on illegal immigration in the same state where the President of the United States was yesterday. Fascinating stuff. Big takeaway from that. He's going to be joining us. 710 Raven Harrison, ravenharrison.com. She's sharp, does a lot of stuff for Fox. She's going to give us a preview now that we have some shape to the GOP presidential primary debate coming up a couple of weeks from now, how that might go down. Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft, I want to ask him, interesting on Twitter yesterday, we were talking about the Tyson factories closing. Interesting statements on Twitter.
Yeah, he basically said if I was governor, this wouldn't happen, and said, Missouri needs to be a better partner with existing businesses.
So I want to ask, we'll ask Jay about that coming up. He's here at 8:10 on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Stephanie Bell has made it into the house. Before we get into Fox, by the way, let's bring in Fox's Ryan Schmelz. Ryan, how are you, man?
I'm doing good. How are y'all doing?
I'm doing all right. If you can hold on for just a second. So, Stephanie, we're in different studios here in Wake Up Mid-Missouri, Ryan, because we're syndicated all over the state. So there's different places we can go. Somebody forgot to communicate, even though we are in the communications industry, somebody forgot to communicate to Stephanie that we were going to be in a different studio. So the question, Steph, so Stephanie's here now. Who are you blaming? That's what I want to know.
All of you all.
There you go.
Apparently everyone got the memo but me.
We are so glad you are here. All right, Ryan, you ready to work, bud?
Let's do it.
All right. Two big takeaways from this hearing in Arizona yesterday regarding our border.
Well, I think one thing, you had this rancher who was testifying who pretty much brought up, and these are things that, some people don't consider if they're not on a border town. But this was a cattle rancher who has had his fence broken a number of times, and that has led to, cattle getting out of his area. And then ultimately he's got to track them down. And he's seen that over a number of years. And he's talked about how this is just something that we have to live with now, because they feel like the federal government isn't doing anything about it. And, he brought up how this has an impact on the school system, it has an impact on the hospitals, and it also has an impact on entitlements in healthcare, too. And one thing he did testify about that we could maybe see Republicans flirting with on the federal level was how the sheriff of Cochise County has what they call a SABRE team. That's a program that they believe has worked for them and has actually stopped the use of drugs and also the flow of drugs on his ranch over the years. So could that be something that gets flirted with for CBP to do down the road? Maybe that's possible too. But I think also the other takeaway is that these hearings still have remained radically partisan, where you see Republicans have these hearings on the border and other different locations. They did this at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office not too long ago, but Democrats did show up to that one. But these ones on the border that they've had usually remain partisan, and Democrats do not show up, and that was the case this time.
Fox's Ryan Schmelz hanging out with us this morning here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri, hearing regarding illegal immigration in Arizona. Guess who else was in Arizona yesterday?
Joe Biden.
Guess who didn't go to the border yesterday?
Biden.
Nor Kamala. But Ryan Schmelz, he knows what happened there. Did the name of the Department of Homeland Security Director Alejandro Mayorkas, did his name come up in these hearings?
Oh, absolutely. He's been a major target of House Republicans for some time. And one of the chairs of the hearing yesterday was Andy Biggs, who has been asked at press conferences before by our senior congressional correspondent, Chad Pergram, who's somebody you'd like to see impeached? And he actually said at this one that Mayorkas was the low-hanging fruit for people that the House Republicans have been looking at for impeachment. The question is, though, do they have the votes to pull that off? Yeah, certainly there is criticism from some Democrats on that and also moderate Republicans, but whether or not they would support an impeachment inquiry or a vote of impeachment, I think that still remains to be seen, because it's a question of if they don't have the votes in the House or not. And if they don't have the votes in the House, they definitely don't have the votes in the Senate.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, there's a couple of congressional Democrats from Texas who have said, listen, Joe, it's causing us problems here in our states. It is a drain on our resources. Those people who pay tax dollars, these emergency management services, schools, healthcare facilities, they are being overrun. And then what happens is it goes beyond Texas, Arizona, New Mexico. It affects other states. And Ryan, I will tell you, in case when you chat with other folks this morning, we can tell you, even in the heart of America, here in mid-Missouri, John Marsh and I were always talking about the number of people that are jailed in our local jails, whether it's Boone, Callaway, Monmouth, whatever county it is. the number of people that are in these local jails and they've got fentanyl charges attached to whatever it is they're there for, and the fentanyl comes from Mexico. What about in the fentanyl specifically? Was this a discussion, or was it that just kind of in line with the human smuggling and all this? Anything specifically about fentanyl?
Well, they certainly do bring up fentanyl a lot and how they've seen it massively increasing over the last, few years. And I think you have the sheriff of Cochise County who is bringing that up too. And, which is when we talk about fentanyl in general, it's become a major problem in many different cities. You're hearing reports where they tell people, you can't take any street drugs anymore. You shouldn't have been taking them in the first place. But the chances of that being laced with fentanyl leading to an overdose has increased drastically. So you see so many cases where there's accidental overdoses that happen because somebody took something expecting it to be, a typical street drug, whether it's cocaine or something else, and it ends up becoming a nightmare for them because it was laced with fentanyl and leads to a possible overdose. So you see a lot of different testimony surrounding that issue, and it hasn't really gotten any better from what we understand.
Talk to us a little more about the testimony we're hearing from the ranchers, because we hear all the anecdotal stories about fences being cut, a lot of ranchers putting out water and food for people, even have isolated incidents where cattle are killed by the immigrants. But they're the ones facing some of the biggest challenges, aren't they?
Yeah, they certainly are. Their property lines oftentimes go across the border. I think in this rancher's testimony, he was talking about how he does have parts of the border wall on his property. He had some when Barack Obama was in office, and he had even more when former President Trump was in office. But, I think one thing he brought up was that he feels that, he was seeing about 10 illegals a week when former President Trump was in office, and that number has increased drastically over the last couple of years. And a lot of that is he feels like there was a promise of amnesty, or at least that's what the migrants who have been crossing have been communicated by smugglers. That's something that you hear the administration actually talk about a lot, is that there's this misinformation campaign that's going on in Mexico where these smugglers are telling migrants that if you can come to the United States, you won't face any repercussions if you're apprehended by Border Patrol. And that's how they're able to get more people to agree to pay the smugglers to try to cross. And certainly that's been something they've been trying to combat with the Mexican government. Whether or not it's been effective or not, there's different analysis to kind of prove that whether it's working or not working.
And final question, and I don't want to catch you off guard here because I don't know if this hearing started before, but photos were released yesterday, Border Patrol showing men like in flak jackets, bulletproof vests, machine guns illegally crossing the border. There were more than one. These pictures were coming out. Did that come up in the hearing? Was anybody aware of that yet?
I believe that broke a couple hours before the hearing actually started. This is a hearing that kind of started late in the evening, at least on Eastern Standard Time. I think it was a little bit more afternoon over in Arizona, but certainly those pictures were definitely prevalent. People have seen them, and they're very concerned about it. We're talking about heavily armed, likely drug cartel members entering the country. From what we understand, Texas has deployed special forces, or I believe the Border Patrol has deployed its special forces, and they've not been able to find them as of right now. And you also have the drone footage that was released, I believe, yesterday or over the weekend that showed a smuggler leading a significant group of migrants into a certain region and then letting them go. And then that smuggler eventually went back across the border of Mexico. So there's been a number of different video evidence over the last couple of days that have led to a lot of concern from both parties.
Numbs the brain that then you have somebody like Texas Governor Gregory Abbott trying to protect our country by doing everything he can. And then the guy in the White House eating pudding for lunch every day, taking naps behind the desk in the Oval Office. Joe Biden is suing a fellow American who is trying to protect our country. It numbs the brain and hurts the brain. Fox's Ryan Schmelz on this hearing yesterday regarding illegal immigration, and Alejandro Mayorkas went down yesterday in Arizona. Man, always cool hanging out with you. We appreciate your help.
Hey, absolutely. Anytime, guys. Thank you.
Sounds good. New city administrator in Jefferson City. He's in Moberly right now, hopping on 63, heading an hour south. What do you know about this guy, Brian Crane?
Known Brian for a long, long time. When he was a Jefferson City councilman, he's a very young guy. He's a Jefferson City native, went to Elias High School, went to Lincoln University, got an advanced degree, I think, from William Woods in Fulton, if I'm not mistaken. So he'll be a good one. He'll come in September 25th, his first day on the job after Steve Kroll, the previous guy, left after like 9 years on the job.
You know, I thought was cool. Fire Chief Matt Schofield. How cool is that? You're a fire chief. And I also help run the city. I'm also the city administrator for a while.
They had to do a pretty good sell job on the chief, we understand, to get him to do that one.
What I thought was really interesting, Brian Crane was asked by KRCG, okay, so what's some of the biggest things facing us right now? Number one answer he gave, first thing he said.
Obviously, the housing's a...
Housing. We know, right?
That's what I talked to him about as well, and he said he'd had some pretty positive work in Moberly in that same regard, so he's maybe try to bring some of those thoughts to Jefferson City.
John, did you ask him about the Moberly Panty Bandit from a couple years ago?
No, we did not.
Dang it.
Should have.
I think it's always dangerous, when you're doing this hiring, perhaps, when you're bringing in someone from outside, right, who has no knowledge of your community. I think it can also be really dangerous if you're bringing in someone who has a history with the community. And so I think this strikes the perfect balance. I think having someone familiar with your community who served before, who knows the people, knows the politics is helpful. It kind of gets you started a little quicker. I remember when Steve Kroll was first hired and we said, what are you going to do? And he said, I'm going to spend probably the first year just learning and listening, because he didn't have any history with the community. And here, I think Jefferson City really needs someone who can really hit the ground running, but doesn't have so much history with the community that that you're worried about personalities or anything else. Everything I heard yesterday was overwhelmingly positive, and I think this is a step in the right direction.
Coming up just a few minutes from now, John, a couple old white guys like you and me, something
day at 35,315. The S&P 500 fell 19 to 4,499. NASDAQ saw the biggest percentage decline, falling 110 points to 13,884.
And we'll look at futures coming up in the morning bell at 8:25 with Stephanie Bell. Plus 750 we're going to be doing. And that would be all except for this with John Marsh. What do you have for us this morning?
This morning, I think we will check in with an issue surrounding a blue bomber.
Blue bomber. And then Hannah's got What's Hot with Hannah. I love What's Hot with Hannah, man. Really cool. Just something fun. 725-ish. Are you stacked there yet, Hannah?
I am. Marsh actually sent me today's story.
Nice. John doing double duty.
Watch what you wish for, right, Hannah?
You know how excited he's been about the Barbie movie.
Yep, pretty much.
Welcome into the show. It's Wake Up Mid-Missouri. There's Stephanie Bell.
Good morning.
Of course, there's Marsh.
Yep.
Producer Hannah is here.
Hello.
My name is Branden Rathert. Brian Hausworth is here, too. Raven Harrison's going to be joining us a little bit after 7 o'clock. Debate set for the GO. Well, it says taking shape. She might preview that for us a little bit. And then her take on what happened in Ohio. This was an initiative petition, like basically saying, hey, you want to change the Constitution? You got to have more than a majority. You got to have 60%. It failed. It was really about abortion. Her reaction to that. Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft, he joins us. 8:10, of course, he is also running for governor. One of the things I want to ask him, his take on these Tyson plants, chicken processing plants closing. He says this basically would not have happened under his watch. We'll ask him about that at 8:10. There's a rap artist called Neo, one of the rap artists I happen to be familiar with. Why are you laughing, Hannah? It's kind of a big deal. Like, hey, I know who somebody cool is, man.
Yeah, and then you proceed to, like, I don't know if it's boomer-splain or what, but it's like anytime you know something that's considered cool, you feel the need to explain
Brag.
it in a certain type of way.
Neo asked about transgender issues.
If your little boy comes to you and says, Daddy, I want to be a girl, and you just let him rock with that, he's 5.
And where did he get that
if
from?
If you let this 5-year-old boy decide to eat candy all day, he's going to do that.
Exactly.
Like, when did it become a good idea to let a 5-year-old, let a 6-year-old, let a 12-year-old make a life-changing decision for themselves?
So you know what happened next? People got upset, and then after that, his PR put out a tweet saying, hey, I'm sorry, I'm blah, blah, blah. Except the problem is he wasn't sorry. He put out a video, and he basically said, this is BS. He says, I was asked my opinion. I gave my opinion. My opinion was not wrong. As a matter of fact, his opinion was so simplistic. If your 6-year-old comes to you and says, I'm a chick or what? No. If your 6-year-old comes to you and says, I want to eat a candy bar for dinner tonight, as a parent, you say no. So here was his reaction to his PR publicist apologizing for him.
First and foremost, I do not apologize for having an opinion on this matter. I am a 43-year-old heterosexual man raising 5 boys and 2 girls, okay? That's my reality. Now, if my opinion offended somebody, yeah, sure, I apologize for you being offended because that wasn't my intention. My intention is never to offend anybody. However, I'm entitled to feel how I feel. I'm absolutely entitled to feel how I feel the same way you are entitled to feel how you feel. I ain't asked nobody to follow me. I ain't asked nobody to agree with me. I was asked a question, and I answered the damn question. Okay.
I love that.
I love it.
Whether you agree with his take on the transgender thing when a little kid comes in and says, I'm a boy, when they're not, whether you agree with that or not, I love this guy. All of a sudden, I want to listen to Neo music.
I thought it was interesting. He said you could identify as a goldfish for all I care, but it becomes my issue when you try to make me play the game with you.
That's right. And that's, I think, the big thing. Really, nobody's hateful about that stuff. They're not hateful. It's just, great, you do your thing. You don't push your thing on me. I'm not going to push my thing on you. And that's what he said. And I think that encapsulates the feeling probably of the majority of Americans.
And I think in particular, he's saying, look, I have kids. I'm a parent. I want one.
gas, and I get it. It's Hollywood, it's make-believe, but wouldn't somebody in the post-editing room, Raven, from RavenHarrison.com, somebody would have caught that, right? Like it's beeping. You can hear it in the commercial.
Not on his team. I do not believe anybody on his team would have caught that.
That just blows
nobody
me.
on his team pumps their own gas.
Well, that blows me away in a very boring campaign ad. Anyway, by the way, some movement in the GOP nomination for Better Second Choice. We are covering that with Raven Harrison here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Good morning. Welcome into the show. There is Stephanie Bell.
Good morning.
Marsh is here.
Yes, sir.
By the way, we're talking about election results in Ohio. The proposition that said, hey, 60% if you want to change the state's constitution, that failed. It was really about abortion. Marsh local election that we wanted to make sure you're aware of the results, too.
Yeah, Jefferson City, Cole County, the Prop L measure to raise property and personal property taxes to fund an expansion remodel of the library went down to defeat, not quite 2-1.
Yeah, so it went down pretty easily, and one of the issues had been homelessness around the library. That's not the fault of the folks that run the library. I know they are passionate about what they do, but when you try to ask people for more of their money for already right now unpopular libraries, that's a big ask, and apparently that failed. Producer Hannah, there she is. Good morning, Hannah.
Good morning.
Houseworth is here too. My name is Branden Rathert. Something we can do for you. 874-9390. Raven Harrison. RavenHarrison.com. Let's start with your reaction to the vote in Ohio. It was about changing the Constitution, the state constitution. Really, it was about abortion. Your reaction to how the vote unfolded there last night?
I think Ohioans got it right. I mean, we're not at the point right now in our country, in our government, in our leadership, in our unity to be able to be talking about amending, changing, updating, quote, air quotes, the Constitution. Right now, we need to get back to brass tacks. And as boring as Pence's was, that's what we need to be talking about. As far as the abortion issue, again, that is a whipped up issue that the left loves to hammer on, because this was not, before 1973, this was not a federal issue. It was until Roe versus Wade. Now that this is back, all that's happened now with the Supreme Court decision is it has gone back to the states. The states can decide if that's what they want to do. And I'm still floored by people who feel like they can't leave. If their state doesn't reflect their values, they feel like it's just a much better idea to piss and moan instead of just, moving to California or New York or somewhere that more closely aligns with their values.
Do you share, this is an observation I have, I don't know if it's accurate or not, but I remember in the 70s and 80s, I'm coming into my political and social acumen, and it seemed like it was widely accepted then that abortion is like, yeah, it's an uncomfortable thing. It's a very personal thing for anybody. But it was not encouraged. I almost feel like a lot of progressives, they're almost like they're encouraging abortion. That's the way I feel. Do you get any of that, Raven?
I do, and I see it from both ends, because this is an issue that I'm very passionate about, because I feel like the arguments that have come, the most compelling argument I have ever seen came from the woman who was at the center of Roe versus Wade. She was the Jane Doe that started all of this. And she went to her deathbed. There's a video of her shortly before she died saying that this is the worst thing she was ever associated with. She admitted that this came about from her being in a situation where she made poor choices and didn't want to follow through on them. And that video has all been wiped from the face of the earth. What I think it's become, and then the argument is now, it's become, quote, reproductive rights, which it is not. It is not women's health. It is not reproductive. It is an insurance plan for people who don't want to live through their decisions. So you got the 70s where it was free love everybody, without consequence. And then we went in from the free love everybody to, let's kill the child. And every argument they make does not hold water. Well, what if you're raped? That doesn't change whether the baby's alive or dead. It makes it a horrific circumstance.
I always thought it was odd. And I find it odd that it's called reproductive rights. It sounds to me like it is the complete opposite of reproductive rights. Raven Harrison, she does a lot of stuff on Fox. She is joining us this morning here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. We know who you like for president. It's Trump. Gary Nolan, host of the Gary Nolan Show, weekdays, 9 o'clock here on the radio station, did like a quick poll a couple weeks ago and said, just who's your number 2 choice? Overwhelmingly, on Gary Nolan, who's a libertarian, overwhelming number 2 choice behind Trump, Vivek Ramaswamy. And now there's a better second choice saying Vivek Ramaswamy has moved ahead of Ron DeSantis. And it occurs to me, Raven, we've never asked you, like, your second pick for president, who would that be and why?
Well, it's funny that you say that because I've been asked that a few times recently, and I had the same answer. Vivek Ramaswamy was my second choice for a number of reasons. But again, I still support because we need, decisive, strong, what we've had before. But the reason is just because of the platform. Many of them came out with the, I'm not Trump, and people were like, hey, thanks, congratulations. But what we want to see more is somebody who has original ideas and not having talking points that are all tied to President Trump. And I just think in terms of what you want to do, I just don't think there are a lot of obstacles for him to overcome. I don't think it would be a very likely, but I would just say that would be who I think pound for pound, has the most, quality of character going behind President Trump.
Raven Harrison, RavenHarrison.com, joining us this morning here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Raven, I think we've asked you the question about who people, like Vivek Ramaswamy and some of the other down-ballot candidates, for lack of a better term, playing the spoiler and all. Do you think the ever-Trumpers are just too strong for anybody else really to matter in the GOP primary?
I think what's happening, though, is what you're seeing is they're being helped so much by the Democrats. I've been asked a lot about, Trump's campaign strategy with all this legal trouble. All it has done is put him in the news 24/7, all day, every day, making it impossible for anybody else in the GOP field to gain ground. They are inadvertently doing the work for President Trump, and he's got to be laughing about this, of just how they keep attacking him, They keep his name at the forefront. They keep him out in front of everybody else, and they're all going to hand him the keys to the White House.
So going back to this abortion issue, watching what happened in Ohio and knowing what has happened in states like Kansas, Missouri, currently there's a proposed abortion initiative for the 2024 ballot. It's tied up in litigation right now, but there's some chance that it makes it to that ballot in 2024. How would you, knowing again what happened in Kansas and Ohio, what would your advice be to Missouri politicians and Missourians who are, looking at 2024 knowing this might be on the ballot?
My advice to them is to stay focused on what it is. Americans are getting creamed right now by kitchen table issues, inflation, their 401ks, the wide open border. We have so many other things going on right now. But if you're going to make this logistic issue, I've heard it both ways. You don't have a uterus, you don't have a vote. It's my right. It's reproductive health. I am a woman, and I can tell you it's all garbage. This is just a way to divide our country. We managed to function before 1973, before this was even put up, for the Fed to take over. But you can't have it both ways. If it's your body, your choice, then you pay for it. If it's your health, then you be responsible for it. That means what it means. And making this an issue, and the last thing I will say is there's no constitutional amendment that allows you to kill your baby. There's just not. The Constitution says guaranteed life is number one. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So if they want to keep getting into these gray areas of the Constitution, they need to stay out of that. The government was never meant to be involved in these kind of decisions, and they should not be making these. They should not be funding it. This is not the government's job. How do they stick to what they are supposed to be doing, which is securing the border and balancing a budget and protecting Americans? That's where they need to focus and stop getting off of these side issues to prevent us from seeing that they're not actually doing their jobs.
30 seconds. So there is going to be a little bit of a difference with the debate format coming up 2 weeks from now. So some of the questions for the candidates can involve sound or video, kind of like you might see in a newscast. That's kind of new. There's not going to be any opening statements. 30 seconds, Raven. Anything out of the ordinary that we might expect from the first debate 2 weeks from now?
I don't think so. I think what you're looking at right now is all the eyes are on, once again, Donald Trump. Is he going to be there? Is he going to not be there? I feel like you're going to see a bunch of the candidates just trying to attack him, trying to show why they are a better, choice, and they're really banking on his legal troubles imploding him, which is not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. None of these arguments hold water.
She does a lot of stuff with Fox. Check out her website, Raven Harrison. It's ravenharrison.com. We can't wait till we hang out with you again next week, Raven.
Looking forward to it.
Coming up 7:25-ish, we are going to be doing What's Hot with Hannah. What do you have for us this morning, Hannah?
Well, like I said, John sent me this story, and I'm wondering if it's a story that he can relate to.
Might be.
With the parenting fail aspect. sending me stories about the Barbie movie, and I think it's endearing. I've been enjoying it, John.
That had the pink shirt on and stood in front of the movie poster.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Did you actually go see it?
No.
Oh.
How many times have you not seen it?
All of them.
And I want to say something real quick about the Barbie movie. Listen, most of the movies that come out nowadays, they got some wokeness in there and stuff, and people are complaining. But I also, and I haven't seen it. I don't know. I don't even know if my grandkids have gone and seen it. But it's a movie about a doll, right? Okay.
Well, and I don't necessarily think it's a kid's movie.
Yeah.
It's not the worst movie you could take your kid to, but I don't think it's technically marketed toward kids. And there's a couple jokes in there that you might not want your kiddo to be a part of.
Yeah, my sister, I talked to her about taking the kids, and they said, let's go see the Barbie movie. She says, you should go see it first and then decide.
But no, the story that John sent me for What's Hot with Hannah this morning is it's a TikToker who is retelling a story from her childhood, from the 90s when Barbie was really at its peak back in the day. When Julia, the TikToker, turned 5, she really wanted Barbie to come to her birthday party, right? Character impersonators have been around forever. So her mom did what any mom in the 90s would do, and she went to the Yellow Pages to try to find a Barbie character to attend her daughter's 5th birthday party. When Barbie arrived at the party, the mom realized that she had hired a stripper.
Named Barbie?
Named Barbie.
That makes sense.
She was dressed kind of like Barbie. She had the long blonde hair. She was wearing a bikini top and a grass skirt. Fortunately, Barbie, the stripper, not the doll, had the wherewithal to know her audience of 5-year-olds, and she played along. She kind of, on the spot, had to adapt to actually act like Barbie.
Mommy, why is this birthday clown wearing so much glitter?
So what you're saying, my kids have a birthday party this week, but I need to cancel the police officer I had scheduled for coming to the party?
I would just double check it. Maybe you don't need to cancel, but I would double check.
Now, when Mom hired Barbie to come to the party, was it Barbie, or was it just Barbi? That might be a telling clue.
If you want to listen to the full story, it is posted on the Wake Up Facebook page. And I'm curious if there's any parents listening going, oh, yeah, I had a major parenting fail similar to that. Or maybe not similar. Maybe it's just a parenting fail in general that slightly scarred your kids for life.
874. I got some. I don't know if they're fails, but we used to. The phone would ring when back in the days of landlines. Trevor was 6 years old, and the phone would ring. He was fascinated by the phone, and we'd pick up the phone. Hello, and Trevor. Who is it? Who is it? And I say, Trevor, it's Santa Claus, but he doesn't want to talk to you right now.
Rude.
Parenting fail.
I remember my parenting fail was movie related, and I think it was the first movie we took the kids to, and I didn't screen the movie first, and I thought, and they were very young, and it was the live action Jungle Book, and I was like, oh, this isn't one of those movies that's like really sad, and if you recall, in like the first 5 minutes, both parents like die in a car accident, and my kids just like look at me in horror, and I'm like, oh, I should have like had a conversation beforehand or anything, and I just sat in the theater like, oh, I learned my lesson, which is why we are not going to Barbie before I see it myself.
When the first Deadpool movie came out, there were a bunch of parents taking their kids to this R-rated movie because it's a Marvel superhero. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, my kid watched Murder Mystery and told someone else, I love Adam Sandler. Parenting fail.
John, can you fact check that real quick?
I think we better.
How many natural wonders in the world are there?
I thought there were 7.
There's 7 of them, and the Grand Canyon is one of those, so he kind of got that part right. He came back and said, I'm sorry, I meant the 8 wonders. He didn't say that, but no, there's 7 wonders of the world. Joe Biden in Arizona yesterday, border state. There was a hearing regarding the border in Arizona. Joe Biden he could have hopped in that presidential motorcade. It had been about a 7-hour drive from where he was at the Grand Canyon, 7 hours down to the border. At least, would you have even been mad if he would have went down there just at least for a photo op? Because we would have called that out too, wouldn't we?
We would have.
Because we ain't happy about that. We ain't happy unless we got something to be unhappy about.
I mean, you get too close to the border and it's unsafe. So for security purposes, Biden couldn't get that close.
He was scared, apparently. Or it could have been a 1-hour flight. And he refused to go. And this is the guy he's suing an American. He's suing Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, who's trying to protect America. Think about that. Suing a fellow American for trying to protect us.
Over inflatable buoys on the Rio Grande.
Right. Everything else, we don't care. But the flotation devices in the Rio Grande, that we take exception to. Good morning. Welcome into the show. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri. There is Stephanie Bell.
Good morning.
John Marsh is here.
Yes, sir.
There's producer Hannah.
Hello.
My name is Branden Rathert, 874-9390. Interesting find at a lab in California. Like the stuff they found in there, it's a checklist of grossness. But there was one thing, I don't know why, that especially flipped me out. We're covering that, but right now, so we fact-checked Joe Biden. There are not 9 natural wonders of the world, and Hannah says and you can get us your text, by the way. Hannah, What's Hot with Hannah? Pretty cool story at 7:25-ish. We do it every morning, and this one had to do with a mom hiring what she thought was a Barbie.
Well, it was a Barbie.
It was. For a 5-year-old birthday party or something like that. But the Barbie she hired spelled her name Barbi. Barbie was a stripper who came adorned with a whole bunch of glitter. And all the 5-year-olds like, Mom, what's all this glitter? And it won't get off. Well, apparently the stripper was able to adjust and throw the kids a nice party. But meanwhile, we're getting fact check. So we're talking about parenting fails. Stephanie says she was accused of letting one of her kids watch a movie that was like R-rated or something.
PG-13.
PG-13. Yes. We used to see, there's a bunch of ways we used to tease Trevor, but one of the things, he was fascinated by the phone. Somebody would call, we'd pick up, we're talking with a landline, and he would say, who's on the phone? And we'd say, Trevor, it's Santa Claus, but he doesn't want to talk to you. Parenting fails. Share those, 874-9390.
That's why he's hiding in the mountains of Idaho at this stage of the game. Scared him half to death.
Man, the year was 1996, and my dad was just screwing with me. And now I'm a chicken farmer in the mountains of Idaho. So now people are using the text apparently to fact check Hannah. What are they fact checking you on, Hannah?
Yeah, Tim and Doug reminded me that the Deadpool movie that I was talking about, I mentioned that when the Deadpool movie came out, folks were upset because they were taking their kids to see this Marvel movie thinking it was going to be a wholesome superhero flick. And if anybody's seen Deadpool, you know that it is not
he was pretty dark
movie.
In the comic book even.
Yeah. A lot of folks found out the hard way in the theater with their children. Doug texted us and told me, I said it was rated R. He said it was PG-13, and he was one of the parents who took his 10-year-old.
Really?
Yes.
Does Doug say how that went? Doug, please let us know how that went for you when you took your 10-year-old. 874-9390. 874-9390. Coming up a little bit later, Secretary of State and gubernatorial candidate Jay Ashcroft going to be hanging out with us here on the show. And he did say something interesting, talking about these Tyson chicken processing plants, 2 of them in Missouri, both in the southern part of the state, one basically southeast Missouri, the other one southwest Missouri. Very impactful to these communities. Jay Ashcroft, they put out a tweet the other day. He said, this would not have happened in effect on my watch. So we want to ask him about that. He's going to be joining us at 8:10. There was and I don't know if this was a lab or what, but authorities found a lab-ish kind of thing in California. And apparently they found all kinds of weird stuff. And it's cause for concern. The only thing that's a bigger cause for concern is the only person that I've heard this from or I've seen this from Stephanie Bell. What's the story here?
It's freaking me out. Mm-hmm. So it was a Chinese-owned lab in California. It was shut down eventually, but apparently it was operating for some time. They discovered it, I think, in March, and the health officials, you think about inspectors. I've got a business. I got the fire inspectors. My kids go to a daycare. They're always getting inspected. Apparently, these people had a full-blown medical lab, hundreds of rats or mice in bad conditions.
Sure, you're doing research. You rats.
Hundreds of, or not, they said dozens of different kinds of actual diseases. So like COVID, what's on the list? Hepatitis.
That's the thing that's freaking me out, Steph. It's the list.
HIV.
Did any of them have that weird crotch rash that inflatable rat in Ashland had a couple weeks ago?
I think that was on the list. Malaria, all sorts of infectious diseases, and vats of liquid, unidentifiable liquid. And
delicious.
Apparently no one, and some of the stories, I mean, it is hard to find information about this. And about exactly what happened, why it took so long for this to come out more publicly. Kevin McCarthy has publicly stated, like, hey, we need to look into this, but no one is paying any attention to him, apparently. Seriously. And so it has been traced back that apparently the lab has connections to China. It was right here in the U.S. It was completely operating under the radar, and was full of infectious diseases, and none of the local authorities had any idea. Apparently there was even a fire at the lab, and people showed up to help them and put the fire out, but no one's concerned about what's going on on the inside.
That's scary.
And John, you know hazardous materials. I mean, this is one of the kind of things you do that you've done in your free time over the years. You walk up in a lab that has things like HIV, hepatitis, coronavirus, and other infectious diseases.
You're on the phone to the CDC immediately.
And they were the ones who came and checked this out. But it is interesting. Here's the thing, and there's a conflict. Well, less government regulation, and I get that. Listen, leave me alone. I'm going to handle my business. You go and worry, and you handle your own business. But when you have stuff like this.
And I think it's scary. Okay, so it took 76 days and 14 different agencies, 3 months to clean this lab up. That's how large of an operation this was. And, you got all these people worried about China and what they're doing. This was in our own country, on U.S. soil, right under our nose. They had basically bioweapons, right? They could have released COVID. I mean, any of this stuff. I mean, who cares about Wuhan if they're in California with all of this stuff? It's crazy.
There was a story in the Independent the other day, the Missouri Independent, about we talk about inspections and things like that. About a quarter of Missouri nursing homes, according to a headline from the Missouri Independent, a quarter of Missouri nursing homes haven't had a health inspection in years. And they look for things like, okay, how's the medication being dispensed? What about residents' rights and quality of life? And I know there are some fine retirement homes. But man, you talk about walking into a retirement home, some of the things just general public might see or experience in a retirement home. And apparently Missouri has a pretty intense backlog on some of these. And we getting any more parenting shares or parenting fails?
I mean, we are. We have one from Tom. He said the morning of his daughter's 17th birthday, he told his app to play songs about being 17. He said the app played Winger from the 1980s. He said cringe.
I think I've had some music parenting fails where I thought it was playing the clean version and it wasn't.
We used to have, when I did Top 40 radio, when I was playing Britney Spears records and things like that, Backstreet Boys, we'd have this family psychologist come on once a month, take phone calls. Fascinating. Just fascinating. And we had a parent one day said, hey, what do you do when kids and cuss words, things like that, Eminem and some of the foul language, whether it's movies, whatever it is. And here's what he said. I happen to agree with him because it was kind of our take and what we had done. He would say, man, just don't ever show surprise, because your kids see that. Kids are smart. And if your kid utters a bad letter, don't show surprise. You just roll with the punches. And then his guidance was this. You explain to your kid, it's art, it's movies. Yeah, they say those words, but that's not how we talk here in the real world.
Yeah, same thing when your kid like falls down and they say like, if you run over and you're like, oh my gosh, ow, did that hurt? Your kid like was fine and now he starts to cry because he's like, well, if you think it hurt, then it did hurt. And now I'm hurt. And if you're just like, yep, all right, let's keep going, then half the time kids will just walk it off.
Well, where's Tipper Gore and her warning labels when you need her?
Tipper Gore, wife of former Vice President Al Gore. She was the one that got the record labels.
Now, she was the one with the explicit content stamp on the back of hip-hop and other genres.
Well, and nothing would make you as a teenager want to listen to something more than if it had a big old explicit stamp on it.
That's also psychology. Oh, you're telling me I can't do this? Guess what I want to do all of a sudden?
Oh, I'm totally putting that in the CD player.
That very thing that you said you don't want me to do. That's what I want to. That's what I want to do now. 874-9390.
The plot thickens on the Deadpool fact check.
Uh-oh.
Jack sent us a screenshot at 874-9390. And he circled where it says that Deadpool was rated R.
Really? So Hannah was talking about the movie Deadpool. A bunch of people, when the Marvel movie came out, started Ryan Reynolds. When the movie came out, people, Marvel comic character. This would be great for the kids. And people took their 10-year-old kids and they got some big old buckets of popcorn and they sat there in the movie theater. And then Ryan Reynolds started uttering the F word, I don't know how many times. And the parents were like, because that's one of those things, it might be hard not to be surprised in that situation.
And Doug texted us and shared his experience when he took his 10-year-old to the Deadpool movie. He said, I sunk low in my chair and never mentioned it to the boy's mom. He said, I think using the word awkward doesn't even quite describe my feelings at the time.
Deadpool, wasn't he the guy, I think, the character, who marries a prostitute and all that kind of stuff in the comics anyway?
But the embarrassment goes the other way as well. I had a friend once who went to a show, and I actually went to a comedy show once, and we went with my friend's parents, and she had gone like with her boyfriend's parents. And it was like an X-rated comedy show or like a show with a little bit more skin. So having to sit next to like your friend or your boyfriend's parents during one of those, I also sunk very low in my chair and was embarrassed.
John's got something really good coming up for us at 7:50, and that would be all except for this. One more story. Years in 1981, VCRs were coming out, and they were like, $800-900. Very few people. Yeah, they were
Betamax.
Super expensive. So we didn't get one because we grew up in inner city St. Louis. We did not have a VCR at the get-go, but Grandma and Grandpa had a VCR. We'd go over to their house and watch movies, and we went up to the local video store. This is even pre-Blockbuster, and we got some movies, and we sit there, and it's me and cousins from Springfield, and we're in St. Louis watching with Grandma and Grandpa, who were in their 60s, and this movie was filthy. And we are horrified, 10 and 12-year-olds, holding on to the edge of our seats, taking advice from Doug, not saying a word, and then wondering. And none of us wanted the movie to end because then we were going to have to talk to each other, The movie ends, and my grandma turns around and says, well, next time get something that's a little bit saucier so I'll enjoy it. And that's why my grandma was really, really cool. Coming up, we are going to be doing, and that would be all except for this with John Marsh.
The Blue Bomber makes
basically this would not have happened if I were governor. Am I kind of summarizing that properly?
I think you are.
So good. I don't want to get that wrong. He's going to be here at 8:10. We'll ask him about that.
And that would be all, except for this.
With John Marsh. What do you have for us, John?
Well, we've kind of promoted this as the Blue Bomber. A little spat of bird droppings on one's vehicle now and then is nasty but completely normal. But when human feces comes spraying down from the heavens, all normalcy flies out the window.
So let me, when you decided you wanted to do this, you didn't tell me that every day the topic was going to be something that makes the stomach all queasy.
Well,
It's lucky when a bird poops on you, right?
That's good. Yeah,
I think
it's like
so.
destination listing. Let's see. Bethany Boker lives right below the flight path of the Salt Lake International Airport and sees dozens of commercial planes every day, and she says it's disgusting. For the second time in a matter of a few years, her driveway has been the target of falling human fecal matter. At first, I thought, wow, some bird really took a dump on my car, but she soon realized...
This is a 287-pound bird.
That's it. The stinky splatter did not come from a bird. She says this is undeniable. I just want it to stop. Anyway, the so-called blue ice has hit homes all over the world, including a Philadelphia teen experienced in the middle of her Sweet 16 party. And in England a couple years ago, a, quote, frozen lump of wee went shooting like a meteor through the roof, then through the floor of Carolyn Guy's motorhome.
Frozen?
And now you know the rest of the story. That was in the UK.
Whose job is it to determine when they go and when authorities are called, hey, we had this chunk of blue ice fall in the driveway, and the authorities, maybe John Marsh, even from Hazmat, shows up. And,
yeah, there you go. Well, the Boker said she had a cop come by her house, and she said, it looks like, I don't know, it's kind of brown and sticky and hydraulic fluid. And,
taste it.
And the cop said, no, it's something nastier than hydraulic fluid.
What does it taste like?
Yeah.
I thought it was
Cheech
like
and
an...
Chong bit, right? Good thing we don't step in it.
I thought it was like an RV where they, when you rolled up to the jet bridge, they pumped it out. I'm on Wikipedia, which I know Hannah doesn't like, but they said there were 27 documented incidents of blue ice impacts in the United States between basically 1980 and 2003. Yuck.
So we talk about parenting.
on abortion, because had it passed, an abortion rights amendment on the November ballot would likely have been blocked.
In a state that carried Trump in 2020 with 53% of the vote, this issue won, which basically said, hey, so right now, if residents of Ohio want to change the state constitution, it is a majority plus one. 56% of the folks of Ohio said we do not want to increase that to 60%. Now, they're saying it was about changing the state constitution. We're all adults. It was about abortion. That's what it was about. Soundly rejected. Secretary of State and gubernatorial candidate Jay Ashcroft joining us. We've had issues with kind of the same thing on this. Your reaction to what happened in Ohio last night?
Well, I think it's instructive for Missourians that want to change the initiative petition process. I don't think we should be a democracy. I think we should be a constitutional republic with certain rights, take more than just a simple majority vote to remove. So I think that this is something that the legislature will look at as we look at how we can change the initiative petition process in Missouri, not to make it harder to put something on the ballot, but to make sure that if we are going to change our constitution, it's something that the people of Missouri broadly agree with.
And broadly, see, that's the thing I always want. So what is the number? Is it a simple majority? Is it 60%? Is it 75%?
Well, I wouldn't say that a simple majority means that the people of Missouri broadly agree with it, especially when you take into account turnout. In 2018, we had 2 constitutional amendments that were put into our Constitution that were approved with fewer than 14% of the registered voters voting in favor of them, because we had such low voter turnout and we had such close margins on it. Obviously, all of this would be helped if more people would self-educate and get out and vote, so that even if it was just 50% plus one, if you had 80 or 90% turnout, then you could feel better that what you were doing was truly what the broad swath of people across the state wanted.
And then turnout's always an interesting thing. John and I were talking this morning, the idea to increase property tax for the library in Jefferson City did not pass. What was the turnout roughly, John?
The turnout was almost 17%, and the county clerk had been predicting below 10%, so it wasn't insubstantial.
But it sounds bad to say, and 17% of registered voters, 17% turned out in a municipal only one issue election. But you talk about, getting informed and educating yourself on these things. But a lot of times just very little interest. Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft hanging out with us on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
And it looks like new initiative petitions were filed over the initiative petition process, potentially.
We've had all sorts. I think the last time I checked, we were almost to 130 initiative petitions that were filed. The people of the state should know if they want to see any of those that have been filed, they can go to sos.mo.gov. And for the new ones that are filed, there is a question or a comment period, and we would invite any Missourian to give us comments as to what they think about those initiative petitions, what they think that language should be. This is about the people, and we want them involved.
Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft, who has something in common with Stephanie Bell. This morning. We're going to share that. Welcome to the show. It's Wake Up Mid-Missouri. There is Stephanie Bell. Good morning.
Good morning.
There's Mr. Marsh.
Yes, sir.
Brian Houseworth is here.
Good morning.
There's producer Hannah.
Please tell me you didn't.
So Jay started it, actually.
No. Let's be clear. I don't have anything in common with Stephanie, because Branden actually told me the right studio to be at. He misled Stephanie, and because of Branden, she drove to Columbia and had to come back here.
Wow.
So
shots fired. Shots fired.
So here's what somebody didn't communicate. So Wake Up Mid-Missouri, we can do the show. There's various locations we can do the show from. And this morning we're doing it, as it turns out, in Jefferson City, and everybody was on page. And
well, not everybody.
And the secretary was nice enough to tell me next time the show's happening in Jeff City, he would be happy to text me.
Well, obviously you can't rely on Branden.
So Jay, Mr. Ashcroft comes in, and he's like, well, I didn't know you were going to be here. Show was in, you guys were in Jefferson City this morning. I figured you were on vacation. I said, well, Stephanie didn't know we were going to be here either. So welcome into it.
Brian, a question for the secretary.
Thank you so much, John and Branden. Mr. Secretary, we appreciate you joining us. I know Ohio getting a lot of attention. I'm going to read you a tweet that came in overnight. I saw overnight. Pretty short tweet. I'm going to read it and get your reaction. It comes from Jess Piper, who is a Democratic activist in Northwest Missouri, former legislative candidate. And she writes this on Twitter, Mr. Secretary, quote, Look at Ohio. Running on abortion is a winning issue. It's the reason the Missouri Republican GOP is stalling and suing to keep us from gathering signatures to get abortion on the ballot, period. They know we will win, end of quote. Mr. Secretary, your response to Ms. Piper?
Well, I mean, I would just politely disagree with her. I think her electoral history has shown that she's not so good at understanding the people of Missouri. As much as abortion did play a part of a role in what happened in Ohio, I don't think you can say it was entirely because of that. I think people were concerned about what power they would be giving up because they don't trust government to do what it should be doing. And, of course, we've seen in Missouri that pro-life candidates win time after time after time. And I believe that when Jess Piper lost just in 2022, it was to a pro-life candidate.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yesterday, there was some big news about Tyson, and we've seen some other news in Missouri about rural jobs and some pretty significant job losses. You responded via tweet, as governor, you will make sure that we keep rural jobs. What would you have done differently to have retained Tyson?
Well, first and foremost, there have been some, and I don't want to call out individuals, but there have been some incidents over the last 7 years where the state has acted in ways that have put Tyson on the defensive. They've had to spend money to put the truth out when the state was wrong, that have made Tyson feel like they were unwanted in the state of Missouri. And if we make companies feel that they're unwanted, there are other states that are happy to get those jobs, and they will move. And I believe that we need to make sure that we will be fair with companies, that we'll be truthful with what we say, and that we won't be pushing them away. That's all I was saying. And, you know, it really scares me and concerns me that you saw some people say, oh, there was nothing we could have done. Yeah, that sort of attitude is how you lose thousands of jobs in rural Missouri.
So what's happened? You said in the past 7 years there's been some things in your mind. What has happened in the past 7 years?
You know, there have been some statements at the state level that have mischaracterized what was going on at Tyson or mischaracterized what the law was. Tyson has had to respond to those, and that is just, you know, look, I've visited the Tyson plant. I was talking to some chicken farmers 2.5, 3 weeks ago down in southwest Missouri, and we have not had the relationship with Tyson that we should, and we need companies to know that Missouri is an area where they can be, where the rules are going to be clear cut, where we're going to treat them fairly, where they're going to have good workers, where we're going to have low regulations, and we just haven't done the job we should have.
Secretary of State and gubernatorial candidate Jay Ashcroft is hanging out with us this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Jay, Branden mentioned earlier, Prop L on the ballot in Cole County and Jefferson City was a pretty healthy tax increase designed to do some work, some remodeling at the library. It failed. 63% of the voters saying no. I guess maybe a related question to you. You've been very outspoken on inappropriate content for kids in libraries, and nothing against Missouri River Regional Library. Do you think that could have been a factor in people's minds where they put aside this ballot issue?
I definitely think it is. When you have the Missouri Library Association saying that librarians are better trained and are better positioned to decide what parents' children look at, parents are going to have a hard time saying, yeah, we want to raise taxes. When you have a tax increase that is putatively for creating a new building, and yet it doesn't have a sunset, it doesn't end when you build the new building, I think people say, wait a minute, is this for building a new building, or is this just to have more money going on into perpetuity? When you have what at least people allege that the library has a couple $1 million set aside, I think the taxpayers say, well, why do we need to raise taxes when we have millions of dollars? We already saw that with the gas tax. We had $2 billion set aside that we didn't know what to do with. We raised the gas tax. 2 years later, we had $5 billion. I think the people are getting wise to government.
You know, when I watched DeSantis on stage in Iowa recently, I think he responded every answer with day one. On day one of my presidency, I'm going to say that. What's day one of Jay Ashcroft as Missouri governor look like? What's your day one agenda?
Well, the funny thing is day one won't be the day that I'm inaugurated. Day one will actually be the day that I open up the Missouri House of Representatives as the Secretary of State, because it will give me the opportunity to outline what I want the legislature to do actually before I'm even governor. But beyond that, one of the things that I've always done as an elected official, only really elected to the one office, is I always choose day one to go and meet the staff, to meet the people in my office, to make sure that we're on the same page so that we are moving on day one to protect the rights and support the people of the state of Missouri.
I'm always fascinated by the dynamics, the personal aspect, because you've worked with, you've had dealings with Lieutenant Governor Mike Kehoe, who's running for governor. You've had dealings with State Senator Bill Eigel, who joins us tomorrow here on the show. The personal part of that, I liken that to, like, what if I decided to move to Ashland and I was going to run against Stephanie Bell to be on the board of older women?
You'd lose.
I would lose, number one.
For sure.
Badly.
And I would wonder, but what does that do to our personal relationship? Any insight, like between you, Kehoe, and Eigel on a personal level?
That's all up to the other individual. There are individuals in politics that can concentrate on policy instead of the politics. There are other people that concentrate on the politics and take it personally. I've just always been someone that wants to concentrate on the policy. What matters to me, I'm an engineer. I'm not a politician that fixes the blame. I'm an engineer that fixes the problem. I want to be about how do we get to where we need to be and work with anyone that's willing to.
So let's say you walk into Madison's and there's Kehoe and there's Eigel. Whose hand are you shaking first?
Well, I'm probably not going to Madison's because I'm cheap. Yesterday I took my kids out to lunch at the quote club, which for us is Sam's Club, because that's about the right price that I like to pay for lunch with my kids.
Have you taken the kids to see the Barbie movie?
I haven't seen a movie in years, but I'm pretty sure I would not be taking my kids to see the Barbie movie.
I don't go to movies.
How was
either. Secretary of State, gubernatorial candidate Jay Ashcroft. Anything else that you would like to add as the Secretary of State for the Show Me State? Anything else you'd like to add for your constituents before we let you go?
I would just like to encourage everyone. We've got a major election year coming up next year. Don't just believe the campaign ads. Don't just believe what you hear, on the radio. Self-educate, get out. Government is too important to leave to the elected officials. We, the people, need to be involved.
Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft here on the show. When we get some kudos to somebody in your office, JD. He's always very helpful when we need info from you. So we tell him that we do appreciate his efforts. Coming up 5 minutes from now, we're going to be doing twist that only Stephanie Bell can give you.
Everything holding right about even. Futures are just barely up this morning, and the Dow seems to be bouncing back between red and green. Big news yesterday, pretty late in the day, on Barstool Sports. Now, if you recall, I want to get this transaction right. I think it was 3 years ago-ish that Barstool inked a deal, and of course, Barstool's previous owner, until yesterday, was Dave Portnoy. He had sold off pieces of the company, but then he inked a big deal with Penn Entertainment. Penn Entertainment is in the gaming space, and huge deal. I think they paid Portnoy like $500 million. The numbers are enormous. And yesterday he bought the whole thing back and now is 100% owner. And it's got like some free speech implications. He said, look, with all of the regulations that come with being in the gaming space, which I'm really familiar with, there was some tension there, and we couldn't always say exactly what we wanted to say. As a company that has never been in a highly regulated industry, and basically what I was kind of, it's not for everybody, right? Those industries are not for everybody. And especially, and so before Barstool had been kind of, way out there, and I think, tried to rein it in a bit. And they said, look, it's a win-win. Portnoy gets everything back, which apparently he has not had full control of Barstool in like 12 years. He gets it back for free. So he gets to keep all the money. He gets it back for free. Penn gets, I think, 50% if he ever sells, which he went on social media last night and said, I'm going to the grave with this thing. I'm not selling. But also a win for Penn, because apparently they inked a huge deal with ESPN that they are really excited about. Their stock, spiked. I think Barstool, a lot of OG Barstool people are very excited for like the return to like, I don't know, original OG Portnoy. I wasn't a fan of, I was unfamiliar with him until more recently. It's been around for a while.
Yeah, it's dudes talking.
03, I think. Yeah, it's been around for like 20 years.
It's dudes talking sports, Barstool sports. I mean, it's pretty, like we talk about, for me personally, I talk about like a Barstool knowledge of politics, maybe a little bit more than that. But yeah, Barstool, the stuff that really matters is the way I take it. And he got paid in effect, a winning Mega Million lottery ticket. That's in effect what he's getting. $500 million for this company, all because this dude has a passion for sports.
It's crazy. And I think too, as we were watching, we've talked so far about like all of the shakeups in the media industry and these other kind of content producing entities and surrounding news, either consolidating or basically going. You talk about Vice. There's a whole long list of folks that there's really been a lot of shakeups. Of course, Fox, I feel like, is kind of in a weird space right now. And so I think this is big, and I think I'm interested to see what direction Barstool goes under Portnoy, if they go way out there on content, or if they try to do something different. He did have to sign a non-compete, so even though he got it back for free, he can't get back into the gaming space.
And we create a lot of cool content too. You can always go to our websites, 939theeagle.com, KWOS.com. Check out podcasts from the show each and every day. It's Wake Up Mid-Missouri on demand anytime, all the time. And then, of course, Marsh and Houseworth, they're always posting news content. They're creating content, and those things go on the spaces, and they're here on the radio. We're on video. We're on YouTube. We're on Facebook.
And check out our new app. It's really, really cool. I missed something actually on one of Fred Perry's shows, and it was so easy to get on the app and go back and listen to Mike Murphy from Como Buzz.
And Hannah, do we have to, like, if we have the apps already, do we need to go and delete those and redo those? How do we do that?
If the app hasn't already asked you to update it, you should just need to do an update on the app through your Play Store.
And it's really, seriously. And you know me and tech, right? Whatever. Jay Ashcroft knew the show was happening in Jefferson City.
Mm-hmm.
How come Stephanie Bell didn't know? I apologize for my part in it. I'm not apologizing for the whole thing, not all of it, just my part.
Fine.
My name is Branden. I'm the guilty offender this morning. I ain't real good at the communicating. Welcome into the show. It's Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Did you get your Mega Millions lottery ticket?
Sure did.
You stoked?
Yeah, when's the drawing? Isn't it tonight's isn't it Wednesday? It's tonight, right?
It was last night.
I have bad news, Stephanie.
We have more bad
Am I a
news.
winner? What?
Not only were you not invited to the show this morning, but
Did someone win? It was way high.
yeah. So tonight is the Powerball drawing. Last night, Mega Millions. I think it was 1.5 million, and then the winner, if they take the lump sum, it's going to be about $250 million more than what Dave Portnoy is getting back for his Barstool Sports thing. $750 million.
Here's my ticket. I even had two. I paid $4. Did I get any numbers?
Would you like to check the numbers just for the heck of it? 32.
No.
19.
Nope.
13.
Nope.
33.
Nope.
20.
Nope.
Mega Ball 14.
I got 0.
That's how you
Not
play.
Not even like $1. What do you win if you get one?
Nothing.
I got you $1.
Oh, it's like their line, the lottery line. You know, you can't win if you don't play. Well, you can't win if you do play, generally too.
Well, and that's how you play the lottery. You play the Stephanie Bell method. You buy the ticket and check your numbers later. It's like, the greatest thing, and I don't know what your thoughts are on reading horoscopes. They're fun back in the 70s. You read them, whatever. Read your horoscope the day after to see if
your day was if it was accurate.
Yeah. So like today, you'd read your horoscope for August the 8th. How did my day shape up yesterday? Drawing's already been done. There's a Powerball drawing.
Did somebody
tonight.
win the big one?
Yeah, somebody from Florida won the full $1.5 billion Mega Millions jackpot. Now it goes down to $10 million.
Who wants that?
Who's gonna put forward a couple of bucks to maybe win $1 million? Earlier this morning, something we do every morning. We do something called, and that would be all except for this. How would you describe it, John?
Lowest common denominator, 14-year-old boys.
I didn't know that's where we were going with it, but that's kind of what it's
pretty
turned
much
into.
it, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's right before you get into work at 8 o'clock. It's just something kind of fun, something kind of different, maybe one of those things. Because we love to go into work, right? And be able to make our coworkers laugh or share something like really interesting. Did you see this here? Then that's kind of what John does. And the one this morning had to do with blue bombers.
Poop falling from airplanes, going through buildings and hitting people.
There was this woman, and it made me think of this story. I'd heard about this. At first, I thought, this is from, like some far-out country, and it's BS, may not be true. But apparently there's a woman in Texas, and she's out in the back 40. She's mowing her acreage. She's on a riding tractor, mowing the lawn, just minding her business. Probably got a straw hat, might have a cup of lemonade with a straw sitting there on the side, just mowing the yard. And all of a sudden, a snake falls out of the sky.
Nope.
No.
Nope.
And lands on her. Out of the sky.
How'd it get in that airplane toilet?
That's what we said.
Was it a brown snake?
No, it started out as a green snake until it thawed. So,
come on, guys. Trying to do an intelligent show here. So this snake lands on her, and she says it starts attacking her and everything. And then all of a sudden, so that's freaky enough for some people. Then an eagle comes and swoops down and starts attacking the snake that's attacking her on her arm while she's on the tractor with her lemonade and the straw hat going, what the is going on? She calls her husband. They go to the hospital. She's worried it was the venomous snake, worried she's been bit. Folks at the hospital said, yeah, we don't think it was venomous. We don't think you got bit. See all those scratches and stuff on your arm? That's from the eagle. That's from the eagle's talons trying to claw you. Huh? And I still wonder if this is a true story.
Kind of wonder.
So the snake falling out of the sky is what they're saying. It was very likely the eagle had the snake in the first place.
Okay.
Eagle dropped it. Eagle got mad at this woman, whose name is Peggy, incidentally.
The eagle or the woman?
This eagle named Peggy got mad at this woman and swooped down trying to get
His food back.
Peggy trying to get the food back. Woman freaked out. Remarkable story.
Sound like something, as I told you, it sounded like something right off the Mexican national flag, right?
It does a little bit.
My brother was a golfer when he was in high school, and they were out at the golf course one day for practice, and a bird dropped like a half-eaten fish almost right on top of one of the coaches.
A half-eaten fish?
Yes.
My mother-in-law likes to tattle on me because fish or snakes, not my thing. And I walked on water apparently once when a fish head grazed my arm from the Lake of the Ozarks. And I swear I was with a bunch of at the time, now my husband, but he was my boyfriend and all his friends. And I swear they were like fanning it toward me the whole time we were in the lake, and just one grazed. And she said she was far away, and she said, "You shot out of the water." And we're just
It was like
gone.
that scene from the first Jaws movie, I bet, man.
Oh,
Pretty
the
intensive.
Snake from the tree. And I was on a golf course yesterday. Ugh.
Coming up a few minutes from now, leftovers. Before we get into the Gary Nolan show, one of the things we're going to find out in Leftover, why Gen Zers are rushing to have about him before we get into the Gary Nolan show. It's my dad's favorite show. Yeah, even he likes it better than Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Nolan's coming up a few minutes from now. Some things we did not get a chance to. So why are Gen Zers freaking out and rushing to have babies as soon as possible? They're shocked to realize that 2024 is the last year to have children who are going to be a part of Gen Alpha. Sounds pretty cool, doesn't it? Gen Alpha. Like the alpha wolf, alpha male. The next generation, apparently, is going to be Gen Beta. Nobody wants to be Beta, do they? Gen Alpha, current youngest generation, born between the early 2010s, mid-2020s. Members of Gen Alpha, mostly children of millennials and older Gen Zers. Hannah, I don't mean to be too personal, and if I am, tell me to shut up right now.
Okay.
But... So, since you're getting married during halftime of the Black Friday game between Mizzou and Arkansas, is it inappropriate to ask about your childhood plans? And if so, you're going to try to have a child before this current Gen Alpha expires?
I could not tell you the answer. We are not actively trying to have a child before it expires.
I don't need that many details. Even John freaked out a little
Wow.
bit.
You know what
wedlock and everything.
You know what I mean.
But they could change, if they were worth their salt, they could change their generation name. Because I'm like, it's not like we just go Gen A, Gen B, Beta, whatever. And they are saying they're going to use the Greek alphabet for now. But if you look back, like, I'm a millennial. My generation doesn't have a letter associated with it. And according to Pew Charitable Trust, no official commission or group decides what each generation is called when it starts and ends. Instead, different names and birth year cutoffs are proposed, and a haphazard process of consensus slowly develops in the media and popular parlance. So we could actually influence. If we don't like Beta, you pick something different. So Gen X came from a book Douglas Coupland published in 1991. They were going to call them Baby Busters after Baby Boomers. That didn't stick, but they tried that for a while, and then they said Generation X. Then they were going to do Y, and people are like, I don't, because it follows X, and X came from the book, and they're like, I don't like Y. That's how we ended up with Millennials, which was also after a book, Neil Howe and William Strauss's 2000 book, Millennials Rising. So then we're Millennials. I think Gen Z didn't get renamed because they don't know how to read or write, and so they haven't written a book yet in order to get renamed. But if they're mad about Beta, apparently write a book about your generation, and you could take on that name. It could be something cool.
We did get a nickname, we're Zoomers.
Oh, that's true. Which is also very uncool.
Steph, you got anything for leftovers?
All right, there's elder millennial.
I am an elder millennial.
So there's no official scorekeeper when it comes to generation. Who do you think you are, the official keeper of the names of generation? Yes, I do, as a matter of fact. You know why? Because nobody else has declared that they're in charge of keeping track of generational names. What do you got for leftovers?
This is all. I think he's an elder millennial, but apparently I'm going to nominate him early for Loser of the Week. This week, an appeals court upheld Josh Duggar's conviction for downloading child's pornography, basically sex abuse images. So, that whole show, the Duggars, was premised on them being really pure and religious and everything else. And I actually saw a couple episodes of it. And this guy is where he belongs, I think.
Well, and the whole thing with the Duggar family is the parents and the family knew that, when Josh was growing up, there was several instances where he did things to his sisters. And that was totally brushed under the rug, and he never really had to, deal with that at all. And then, as an adult, he got busted for this. And there's a really good documentary that came out. It's on Amazon Prime called Shiny Happy People. And it's a deep dive into the Duggars. It's really interesting, and it'll make you angry.
When he was charged, all 6 of his mothers were very upset with him.
What do you
Oh, John.
8:35 Friday, we're going to be talking about John Marsh.
I think we also have, we'll nominate John Marsh early, but we also have to nominate Neo. That audio from Neo about his answer.
Yeah, Neo's a rap artist, and he was asked about transgender stuff, and he said, well, listen, 6-year-old kid goes to mom and says, Mom, I'm a boy, and she says, well, let's go get your surgery. He says, that's wrong. That's not what you do as a parent. That's not how that works. His PR firm came out and went on Twitter and apologized. Oh, we didn't. Neo said, he came out and put a video out. We played the audio. It's incredible. He says, no, I'm not sorry, and that's my PR. That's not me. He says, I'm not apologizing for having an opinion, and I happen to be right, I think, in my opinion. I thought it was